Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the April 20th, 2022 Operation Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee meeting, also known as ABAFA. My name is Kenneth Harris. I'm your vice chair for the committee and also the representative for District 7. Thank you for joining us this evening. Firstly on the agenda, I would like to call this meeting to order by adopting the agenda meeting for April 20th, 2022. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Can I have a second?
Second.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, aye. So that's everyone we got here. Okay, good to go. Moving on to item 1.3, I'd like to approve the minutes from our previous March 16th, 2022 meeting. Motion to approve the minutes from the March 16th meeting.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, perfect. Moving right along to section 2, public comment. We actually have no public comment speakers for tonight, but that's all right. Just remind the public that they're free to set up for public comment for our meetings, just like the general body meetings. Moving along to 3.1, we've got the 2022 graduation preparations review, and I believe that will be Mr. Mike Herbstman, our CFO.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So our school leadership team provided me just a brief update on the graduation logistics. Graduation dates have now been scheduled beginning on May 23rd, 2022. Ceremonies will take place indoors at the UMD Xfinity Center, Showplace Arena, or in PGCPS schools. The full schedule for all of the schools, including the times and locations, is available now on our calendar website. It's pretty easy to find, but just if anyone wants a direct link, that is www.pgcps.org/about-calendar/graduation/dates. So it is a mouthful, but we could share that with everyone, and it is easy. If you just Google the PGCPS graduation dates, you'll find it quickly. There will continue to be safety protocols in place this year. First snow ceremony will exceed 90 minutes. Each graduate will be allotted 4 guest invites. Seating on the stage will be very limited, and no guests will be invited to speak or participate in the ceremony. I believe the CEO just provided additional information to the board chair and vice chair, and they'll be sharing that further information with the full board soon. And that's the update.
Very good. Thank you for that. Any questions?
Yeah.
Dr. Miller.
Will there be a mask mandate for the graduations? A mask requirement, I shouldn't say mandate, a requirement.
Dr. Fawcett, are you aware of that, or I can check with you?
What our mask mandate is now is that in any schoolhouse or any school function, we're still required to wear masks unless something changes before then. Yes, ma'am, there'll still be a mask mandate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any questions from you, colleague Valentine?
No questions.
Okay, so Mr. Herbstman, just to say it back to you without saying the full URL, they can find that online. So 90-minute ceremony, you said 4 invites per student, masks are required, and there won't be guest speakers at the graduations?
Yes,
No.
that's all correct.
Okay, and if parents are, I guess students might have questions, is there some way they can direct those questions to? Is that available on the website as well?
The information is limited on the website. I believe Dr. Fawcett, I saw you just came off mic.
I would say specific questions about graduations at specific schools should be directed to the schools. If they're holistic questions about rules and regulations, I can take that in my office. It's a CEO's office. 301-952-6144. Any regular questions about graduation?
Okay. Thank you. So let's move on to the next one. So pass the ball back to you, Mr. Herbstman. for our budget moment, 3.2.
And another very brief update. So currently we are likely facing a relatively small budget deficit this year. And that's because most of the hard work of the budget reconciliation was already completed during the Board of Education requested budget phase back in February. As you know, at that time, we had to take some larger actions to address shortfalls in the governor's proposed budget. So most of that work has been completed now. The Board of Education's requested operating budget totaled $2.63 billion. And that included a request to County Council of $848.1 million in county funding. The county executive's proposed budget includes almost that full request. It is at $847 million in county contribution. That means that if the county council makes no additional changes to the county executive's budget and passes it as is, we are currently looking at an FY 2023 operating deficit of just over $1 million, about 1.1 million.
Okay, and Mr. Herbson, when can we expect to hear back regarding the accuracy of that margin or that deficit?
So I believe that they are required to, the county council is required to pass their budget at the end of May. I believe it's either May 31st or June 1st. I think May 31st. And I see our budget director, Ms. Hull, is shaking her head. So yeah, it's May 31st. And so we'll know at that time if they have added anything additional to it.
Okay, very good. Colleagues, questions for Mr. Herbson regarding these, I'll say, surprisingly small gap we have.
This is I'm curious. I know there was a public meeting of the county council to discuss our budget. Was anyone from the administration there? And if so, can you highlight any questions that came up from the council regarding the budget?
Sure. So yeah, our administration, including the CEO, myself, our budget director, and several others were present yesterday during the committee meeting. It was the Committee on Economics and Work, EWC. I can't remember the acronym now. Is it Education and Workforce Development? I believe. Yes. So they asked us several questions. They're more specific about things in the budget. A lot of questions around graduation rates and around our staffing and representation in our staffing. There were only a couple of questions that were really more specific about the budget, and there's no real indication in that meeting about whether they intended to fund anything different than the county executive's proposal. It was more around just information gathering for them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? You just shake your head, I can see you if not. Okay. So moving right along to, thank you, Mr. Herbson. Moving right along to 3.3, Dr. Fawcett, I'll turn the floor over to you. This just background, this item's on the agenda because on April the 5th, I want to say, we had a meeting regarding the design and kind of talking through some aspects of the new student high school. So I thought that would be prevalent for this conversation, just to make the public aware once again that it is an item on our agenda. So enough of me talking. Over to you, Dr. Fawcett.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair Harris. So tonight we have Mr. Will Smith, who is the supervisor of our project management division in our Department of Capital Programs. As just previously stated by Mr. Harris, most folks know that the process for building a new student high school is underway. Director Matlock is joining us also now of the Department of Capital Programs, but Mr. Smith is going to give us a brief overview of the student high school construction project. Turn over to Mr. Smith at this time.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Fawcett. Let me share the presentation.
And I'm here now, Dr. Fawcett.
Thanks, Sean. Go ahead, Will.
Can you guys see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, can you put it in presentation mode?
And Mr. Smith, before you get started, the other meeting we had was recorded, right?
It was.
Okay, so for the sake of the committee, again, this is just a really brief overview of what was already said. I don't want Mr. Smith to have to go through the whole presentation again. So I'm just encouraging you to do highlights if you'd like, whatever you think the most important bits are, and then we can encourage folks to see the recording and kind of go through other highlights as well. But thank you for this again.
Oh, no worries. Well, thank you all for your time today. Once again, I'm Will Smith. I'm the Project Management Supervisor for the Department of Capital Program. We will be providing a presentation, a condensed presentation on the Suitland High School replacement that is underway right now. Just a brief introduction. The current school is currently home to 3 programs: the Comprehensive High School, CHS, the Career and Technical Academy, CTE, and the Center for Visual and Performing Arts, with a stadium, sports stadium as well. Yeah, as we all know, all of the buildings are beyond aged and are beyond repair and no longer meet the needs and goals of the 21st century for our learning environment for our students. We are actively involved in designing this project, and we're currently in the CD phases and going through permitting requirements as well for this project. The scope of the project, in essence, is originally we started off as a renovation project, and we're looking to see what we can do about keeping the bones and the structure of the facility, and then doing a upgrade to architectural, mechanical components, audio, visual, things of that nature. But then we later determined that full replacement was just and was in need for the school. And so the scope, in essence, is the full replacement of the existing 344,000 square feet that serves 2,477 students at the high school, and the CHS and the CVPA and the CTE. The new design is larger than this. It's about 390,000 square feet with a capacity of 1,500 for the comprehensive students and 500 for the CVPA. The new facility will house solely the CHS and the CVPA school programs, in which the CTE program that is existing at the school will be relocated over across the high school in a subsequent year. The current project budget that we have approved to date is about $228 million for this school, for this project. The team that we have, of course, we have myself as a supervisor overseeing our internal project management team, but our lead project manager for the project is Mr. Sean Nichols, who would be leading on a day-to-day operations of the project. Our design team is Cox Gray and SPAC. They initially did a feasibility for the site, and then ultimately rolled into the design of the project and have been actively engaged in the project for, I want to say, about four years. In terms of our construction team, we actually just were able to successfully get a construction firm identified and under contract award a few months ago. We are proud to be teaming up with Turner Construction and Cornet Construction and a JV venture in order to deliver this project. Turner has been around for decades and is an international firm. They previously were located in Northern Virginia. I think they're still in Reston at this point, but they do a lot of international work. Brunson Cooper, which is the president of Cornet, he started his own firm. He actually is a former employee of Turner Construction, and branched out maybe about 8 years ago to start his own firm, which is Corner Construction, located in Prince George's County as well. And so we're happy that both of them were able to come together, create a JV in order to tackle this project as one. What we're seeing here is really a site plan identifying from aerial view of what the finished product of this site will look like. And so this would be the revised footprint, where you would have on the upper left-hand side, you'll have your football stadium closest to Pennsylvania Avenue. On the left side of that, you'll have your softball field. And as you make your way around, you'll have multi-purpose field, tennis courts, and then ultimately your baseball field as well. Center in this location, you'll have the revised building footprint, which now is home to the existing football stadium, and then the main building going to the right-hand side. The main entrance for the property will still be located off of Silver Hill Road. Come in from your far right-hand side of the screen, enter into the turnabout in order to either go behind the school or in front of the school for the bus loop or into the parking lot area below. The phasing for the project, this is a large, enormous project that is very comprehensive in nature, with a lot of movement and a lot of thought process into how can we go about reducing the impact on our students and the disturbance, reducing the amount of money wasted on temporary classrooms that are temporary in nature, and really invest that money into the project. With that said, the project will be delivered in 3 phases in about 51 months. And some of those phases are concurrent. So if you do the math, phase 1 is projected to be 27 months. Phase 2 would be 19 months, and then phase 3 would be 14 months. The first phase, in essence, is to perform a small demolition of the auxiliary gym that's behind the facility, which will aid for additional logistics for the construction, access routes for deliveries, and actually parking for some of the buses as well behind that facility. So if you see in this highlighted section in phase A, or in illustration A, which will identify kind of our plan going forward for phase 1, we would demolish the stadium and do some excavation and some shoring. And then from there, begin our building pad in order to start the construction for our CHS program. And then phase 2 would go to the CVPA, and then ultimately phase 3 would just be all of our sports amenities. So our stadium, our multi-purpose fields and things of that nature. This page here was just showing really just an internal floor plan layout with color-coded areas highlighting each area of the school. You have your baby blue area circled kind of here in this area, which would be your performing arts. Then working our way down to our visual arts to the left side of that. Moving to our physical education on the far left. And then some of our admin areas and things of that nature. This is more so just another illustration for our second floor plan, just identifying the core areas of our CVPA academic wing in our comprehensive school as well, and the classroom associated with those programs. In addition, it shows a high level view of the auditorium down here, kind of looking down in this area, and then also our performing arts here. And this is another illustration of the third floor and just the CVPA wing. In order to, I'm sorry, the third floor of the CVPA, CHS building, I'm sorry. I'll be brief because we presented a lot of this information already, and we'll be sure to provide the link or in order for you guys to access. Actually, you can access it off of the Department of Capital Programs project page underneath the Suitland High School page itself. There's a link that kind of identifies the full presentation in which we provided the community back at the outreach meeting, but we'll go through here. So this is more so just interior renderings, highlighting kind of what the new Suitland High School project will look like. At the bottom, of course, you'll see that's your basketball court and gymnasium. And then from here, this is the main entrance area and admin area for the top 2 pictures. This is an interior view of the auditorium, teachers' theater, and the recital hall. I know that the students in school are going to be extremely excited to get there and perform in this area. It is about an 800 seat capacity rating and state-of-the-art lighting package, visual package, speaker package, the whole 9. It is an amazing feature for the school. This slide is more interior views, just the learning steps in order to provide, and all of these areas are really just common areas in order for the students to come and socialize and integrate with one another, do some collaborative learning with one another. And so these are, some great spaces in order to promote that. Here we are again with just more exterior views and the entrance of the facility, the theater, performing arts theater, etc. So you see on your right-hand side here, the performing arts facility, and then that bus loop run into the main area where the main entrance of the school is back here. And then more just performing arts renderings.
Mr. Smith,
Yes, ma'am.
go back to that last slide for a minute. Is the performing is all of that the performing arts where the red and the 3 tiers? There are 3 tiers, it looks like.
This bottom picture here on the right-hand side, this is your, on your left-hand side, this is your performing arts building. So it would be this wing. If you look at the top picture, this first building here, where
Correct.
I'm not sure if you can see my pointer, but in this area, that would be a performing arts.
Okay.
And
Now,
that back wing, that bottom picture is your auditorium for the school.
okay, I know board members, the chair likes to move the meeting on, and here I come with my questions, but they're very brief. Will our Performing Arts Center be, and I say our because I've been following Suitland for the last 10 years. Will this center be on the same level as that one at Laurel and Bowie, whereas the public, we will be able to have public performances separate from the school? When I say separate from the school, just like the Bowie Performing Arts Center is separate from the school. That's what I mean in terms of space.
Dr. Foster, were you about to answer that, or you would like me to answer it?
Yeah, well, you can answer it from a construction standpoint. I'll answer it from a facilities.
Yeah, so from a construction standpoint, it will absolutely be. I'm not going to say on par. Honestly, it's the newest, brightest, best technology that you can implement into a performing arts center. And so, but yes, it will be on par, if not better, than what we have at those facilities. I mean, they were older facilities that were built in the past. So, when they were, initially constructed, they were state of the art. And so, I think that's been over 10 years since then. So, yes.
Thank you.
So in terms of the facility itself, the facility at Bowie, it was a joint funded endeavor between the city of Bowie and PDCPS. This will be, totally our funding. But, as with most of our auditoriums, the public will be able to lease it, to use it for events and so forth. So that will continue.
Thank you. Can I ask another question?
Yes, ma'am.
Or should I wait until the end, Chairperson Harris?
You're fine to ask now, as long as Mr. Smith is okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
He doesn't want me to send somebody up on that stage, does he? You mentioned Turner Construction doing a joint venture with, was that a minority company that they joint ventured with?
It was, and
okay.
And so we will, if you want, we can touch base on it now or later, but
you can do it later. I just wanted to know that we had the MBE participation, and we'll talk about what level of MBE later. I just want to know that company that Turner joint venture, because they do stuff all around this area.
Absolutely. Cornick is absolutely an MBE firm.
And
that was very important. I said Cornick is an MBE firm, and that was one of the things that were extremely important to us with this project. And not just this project, all projects, but understanding the magnitude of this project and the amount of opportunity that it will provide, not just for 2 or 3 years, but in essence 5 years, long term. And so that equates to smaller MBE firms, gaining experience in order to be able to go out on their own. That equates to some of the apprentices, eventually gaining the experience in order to go out on their own if they seek. You have people that will start in a lower level position, but by the time the product is over, they'll get promoted into higher level rankings. I mean, it was a huge effort in order to make sure that we are doing not just the project right, but the community and the MBE specifically right with this project.
Thank you.
So this next slide is just really another exterior rendering of the entrance of the school. Is the top picture on your left-hand side as the buses come through the loop and unload their students and then enter into the main entrance back here where you see the Sula High School sign. And then this bottom picture is a rendering of the stadium once constructed and built. In terms of schedule, this is kind of a detailed breakdown, and so I'll just jump through it. In essence, as we already talked about, phase one is about 27 months. We are projected to start the initial phase of demolition work this summer, and then from there move into the following construction work in the fall. The projection for completion of this is about August 2023 in order to move into that following phase, which will start concurrently. That is 19 months, which is projected to be completed 19 months afterwards, of course. And then from there, we'll go into phase three. So if you look here at the top year, we have 2024, which will be completed for phase one, 2025 for phase two, and then 2026 for phase three. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Matlock, who's going to talk about just what we are experiencing as a whole nationwide in the construction industry and also specifically within the DMV area.
So thank you for having me. I'm Sean Matlock, Director of Capital Programs. And one of the things the reason why we wanted to add this to the Suitland is that we know that we're gonna be seeing a lot of additional costs on these projects over the next 3 years based on construction inflation and escalation. We're already seeing it in other LEAs. Everybody's reporting back to it. We're seeing it on some of our other projects that have recently got started. So this alert came out from the Associated General Contractors Association of America. And basically what they were saying was that in the last 2 years, we're having a lot of issues. And that's causing all types of disruption in the market. And as a result, prices are going up and at an abnormal level. And they're trying to keep their people aware of what's happening. Could you move to the next slide? So some of the reasons for this that we're seeing is that, like when they did a survey recently, and they said, your projects, why are they being delayed or what are your setbacks? And 48% of those projects that had postponements or cancellations was because of rising costs. And the supply chain is part of the problem. And they've asked them how are firms responding to supply chain issues. A lot of them are accelerating purchases after winning contracts, which is something we recommend. They've turned to alternative suppliers when possible. And in some cases, alternative materials where certain materials are not available. So the issue is not only just that the price of products are going up, but some of the products are just plain old not available. And so and they have long lead times. We've seen the lead times on materials go from, in some cases, 20 weeks to 60 weeks. So from a few months to a full year, and then even then you're having issues. So there was some pandemic, and the pandemic isn't the only reason for this, but there was some related pandemic costs. 84% of those surveys said that costs have been higher than they anticipated, and projects have taken longer than anticipated. And that's like 82 and 72% of people being in the survey talking about this. And then new hires, trying to find people, it's just costing them more. We're going to show you later, there's about a 7% increase in labor costs over the last year. And so you have like about 83% of people are having a hard time filling positions. We're included in that. We're in the construction agency and we have a lot of vacancies. It's very difficult to fill them for project managers, for planners. It's just very difficult right now. The market is super hot. And again, they were increasing base pay rates for 62% of companies have had to do that in the market right now. And so you're seeing all these things working together to create issues. Next slide, please. So, so kind of how do we get here? So in March of 2022, that this is what they were talking about. I was at a conference and they shared this slide with us. So we have factory shutdowns and cancellations of projects. We couldn't get materials because a lot of things weren't coming in and it delayed things too long. So those factory shutdowns caused a lot of delay. We've had 1.1 million construction industry workers lost in the job. Some of them were lost because they went to work for other industries. In some cases, it was immigration, people not being able to get into the country. In some cases, it was people leaving the industry altogether for other jobs, a lot of moving around. There was the hurricanes and deep freezes and stuff and wildfires that had an impact on materials and ports and other things that kept materials and things from getting in or disrupting the supply chain. And there are also metal shortages and costs rising, as we can see here. There was also a large impact on the input costs. We saw a 20% rise in Q1 and a 63% rise in Q4. Oil prices have gone up, which has resulted in higher diesel costs, which is related to higher transportation costs. Lumber has gone up, steel has gone up. I'll go over in detail how those numbers have impacted us. And then construction employment, again, we have a much higher rate of unemployment or openings in the construction industry, and we've seen about a 7% increase in the overall pay for staff. And so we're dealing with a very volatile market, and everything is in a flux. And so we're going to show you some hard percentages here. Move on to the next slide, please. So from 2020 to 2021, we saw steel go up by 127%. In 2021, plastic went up 34%. Aluminum went up 30% in 2021. Copper and brass went up 23%, and that's in addition to 24% the previous year. Gypsum products went up 21%. That's your drywall and that sort of thing. Lumber and plywood went up 18% after going up 37% the previous year. Architectural coatings went up 14%. Asphalt went up 12%. Diesel fuel went up 55% in 2021 and another jump in 2022, which we'll talk about. Truck transportation and freight went up 18%. Construction and machinery equipment went up 10%. And truck offload tires went up 11%, which is that's a big cost. And as you can see, you're seeing your overall bid prices, your input for your bid prices go up roughly about 19% from December 2015 to December 2021. You're seeing that December 2020 to December 2021, you see a rise of 19% in the actual input costs for construction material. Could you go to the next slide, please? So in 2022, those numbers adjusted even further. There is and diesel fuel went up to 237%. Steel mill products went up 113%. Lumber and plywood went up again to 101. This is the 22 numbers. Copper and brass went up 70%. Aluminum went up 52%, plastic 45%, and gypsum 29%. So, and then the overall bid price for new construction that's non-residential went up 18%. Next slide, please. So in meetings with during my meetings with Maeve, I've just had the discussions about prices and costs on projects, and across the board, these are other LEAs and what they're reporting back, they're seeing about 20 to 25% projected price increase across the board. And so we're bracing for what's going to be hitting our projects as they come down the pike. And we're going to be coming to the board, and we want you to know what's driving some of these cost increases as we may seek to make modifications to the CIP and change orders on certain projects, so you can understand where all this is coming from.
Yep. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that. And I just wanted to jump, I'm sorry to cut you off, Sean. I just want to jump in there. Just pretty much, Sean said a lot to say that, in this day and age, we're having construction escalation costs, so some of our budgets may change. So we'll be coming back to the board, not only probably for this project, but just to explain exactly what's going on in any future projects. We want to keep those lines of communication open.
Yeah, so thank you. Let me do one question first, Dr. Miller, and then over to you. So Dr. Fawcett and Mr. Matlock and even Mr. Smith here, So like you said, it's a lot of concerns around global supply chain and things we've seen from the pandemic, as well as natural disasters, things like that, that create domino effects that impact orders and bid prices and how much things cost and how long things take. Now, are there resiliencies being added within our product supply chain that helps us to mitigate some of those concerns that we see? So, things as far as windows, for example, do we have, are our windows sole source supplied where we just get it from one vendor and we can't move forward unless XYZ happens? I see head shaking, but that's just an example. Are there resiliencies built in?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're looking at right now, and we're having this discussion both with our procurement side and even amongst with everybody, is that we're looking to allow for scope change so that people can swap out other materials and make substitutions in order to get availabilities. We're looking for scope changes on size and design of certain materials and building choices that we make. Equipment choices we're willing to make some adjustments on within reason. We are also releasing material costs earlier so that we can get them in. And we're trying to negotiate where we don't have to pay the warehousing costs, because what we know is that a lot of these projects, even though they're released early, probably won't arrive until just in time based on the supply chain timelines. We're looking for, we're also doing some value engineering on projects to see if we can engineer the better fixes for the projects. And all this requires us to cooperate with our architect, our builders, and our suppliers. And we're also going to try and leverage relationships that we have in the marketplace to try and make sure that we get as much consideration as possible. And so we're working on all those levels to try and keep those costs down as much as possible. We know that there's going to be some increases just about everywhere, but we're trying to keep them as low as possible, and we're trying to give the contractors as much flexibility to keep these prices low. And we're sitting there and communicating this the whole time.
Okay, understood. And my last thing isn't a question; it's a comment, and then over to you, Dr. Miller. With this project being 51 months, or it's like 4.25 years, something like that. I'd be interested to see how that works into the climate kind of action plans that we've been discussing as well. I know Dr. Fawcett's got his eyes on that, so I'd be interested to see how that plan's rolled into that. Again, we don't need to discuss it right now. That was just a comment. Dr. Miller, I see you have a question.
Well, I want to make a comment too. My first comment you brought up. I'm concerned or questioning when you have to substitute materials. The quality of the materials, because they're coming. We may have ordered Pella, but because Pella went up 50%, we may have to go for no name brand or substituting hardwood for plywood. I'm just using these as examples. Will that happen? I hope not, but
let me answer that. Is that we're not going to substitute quality at all, okay. but we will give breaks, and in our contracts we approve any of the changes to the scope. So we're going to ensure that we don't lose any quality or educational functionality for our schools. But we do know that we need to provide opportunities for some of our contractors to to be able to, kind of, stay on budget, stay within budget. What we do also have to understand is that, any price adjustments, ultimately we, will be responsible for within, a certain, unless we have, a maximum price guarantee, which, pretty much they're not going into right now.
They can't do that right now. Well, I'm just asking you because I think just from past experiences with the board, the kind of questions that you all can be prepared for. And I think you've done an excellent job to this evening explaining to us and, how we can be supportive of whatever impact these changes have. Now, this won't delay the construction of these escalating costs and need for change orders. Will this delay in any way our
So let me say in short, most the reason that we are phasing the project is because the students are going to stay in place. The student size doesn't allow us to relocate them, so the project will be phased as the students move, as parts of the building are finished. So this should not delay the project, in terms of the timelines. But we will keep the board informed every step of the way. In terms of any, possible impediments or anything of that nature, we'll keep you abreast.
And let me just add to that, Dr. Fawcett. So just so we're not currently under construction contract award yet. And so all of these changes, they're not going to equate to a change order. What we're doing is right now, we're actually going through and getting it priced up in order to determine what our GMP is going to be. And once we establish that, gross maximum price at that point, or guaranteed maximum price, at that point, then the contract is locked in, our finishes are locked in, our timetable and everything else is locked in. So all the changes or value engineering in essence that we're going through right now in order to identify opportunities to save some money without compromising quality, that is all going to be rolled up into the GMP.
And we've had meetings with them already, in fact, today. And we emphasize that we don't want any delay. We want to move forward as quickly as possible. And they're very anxious to get started as soon as possible as well.
Okay, thank you.
I had another question, but okay. So just from kind of my own PM mind, do you all do any risk analysis in the planning of these projects, or are they public? Sure. Okay. And again, we can discuss that, elsewhere, but it was just a question. Any other questions from my colleagues? Okay, thank you for that presentation, Dr. Fawcett, Mr. Matlock, and Mrs. Smith. Appreciate you. Moving on to 3.4, we've got year in review. This will be lessons learned, wins, and process review. So colleagues, in an effort to be effective and efficient in our work, I want to have or open the floor for potential discussion about process and procedures, and so we can identify what works and what hasn't been working for us in past years. So I'll kind of turn it over to representatives from the CEO now for comments regarding that. I know I know CFO, Mr. Herbstman, had something for this item. And then if Dr. Fawcett has anything to add, he can feel free to jump in. But Mr. Herbstman, I'll let you go first.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. And I know that one specific thing that this committee asked us to look into was the process around the Board of Education requested operating budget, and looking at that amendment process between the time that the CEO presents a budget and the board actually passes their requested budget. So that's what we focus mostly on here, some recommended improvements in that area. And I'll share my screen and very briefly run through the presentation.
Okay. And while you share your screen, colleagues, it's my intent today that Mr. Herbstman is allowed to run through his presentation. And then I'll allow this group, 2 weeks plus to review it before we decide to take the vote, if it'll go to the full board or not. If you all are comfortable with the recommendation today, we can take the vote tonight, but I'm not expecting us to collectively take a vote tonight. We can take it in weeks later. Over to you, Ms. Herbstman.
All right, thank you. And I know you run an efficient meeting, so I'm going to skip through some of this preamble that we had at the beginning. Really, I think suffice it to say in these first few slides that the current process is somewhat flawed. It has been inconsistent over the last few years, and we're looking to, with some of these recommendations, add some formality to it, get to a place where there's a meaningful way and a design process where board members could offer amendments and discuss them before passing them. So that'll skip the first few slides and go into some of the recommendations here. So really all of that leads to this need for a more formal written process. So tonight we'll talk about administration's initial recommendations. As the committee chair just said, we're not requesting a formal approval tonight, just really a discussion of whether this is on the right track to so we can continue refining the process and discuss more in an upcoming meeting. Based on the discussion tonight, we'll amend sort of the draft timeline that we are gonna show and begin working on an administrative procedure outlining the process in some more detail. So based on the recommendation, once the CEO presents the CEO's proposed budget, there'll be 3 phases leading into a final Board of Education requested budget. Phase 1 is the Board of Education member questions and responses. Phase 2, the Board of Education amendments. And finally, phase 3 is really that finalization of the requested budget. And then, of course, running through this whole thing is continuous community engagement. And we'll outline that a little more. So we're looking at relatively minor changes in phases 1 and 3 and more major changes in phase 2 that we'll go through now. So in phase 1, it's important to know as you look at all these dates that we don't have final Board of Education meeting dates or OBAFA committee dates that I think you are looking at in the next item. But so there might be some incorrect dates on here. Everything really is a sample date here just to show that this timeline is feasible, but we will have to amend this as we get some more final dates. So phase 1 would work similarly to the current process. Board members would submit questions and administration would respond in writing. As in the past, the first 2 budget work sessions would be dedicated to additional questions from the board members and answers from the division chiefs and their staff. This is a little more condensed into 2 meetings. The focus would be primarily on follow-up questions to the written responses already provided. And the main difference in this phase is an addition of 2 small group sessions. So the first would be a presentation or presentations from the budget office that kind of go through the budget book format and meeting. As there are and will be many newer board members, we want to provide this more optional session if board members would like to kind of dig deeper into understanding how to read the budget book. We would have optional sessions after the CEO presents their budget. The second would be small group sessions with 3 board members at a time, the CEO, the budget director, and myself, to review some more of the major changes included specifically in that new budget that the CEO was presenting, kind of get more in depth in the discussion with questions that any board member might have for that group. Then phase 2 is where we really are formalizing this amendment process. So first, a board member that wishes to propose an amendment would complete a detailed template outlining the key points of the amendment, and I'll get into that draft template in a few minutes. Administration would provide comment on the proposed amendment. Then the OBAFA committee in this recommendation would, in their meeting, review each of the formal amendment templates, including the comments from the lead board member that sponsored it and the administration. And the committee would determine which of the amendments to move forward to budget work session 3. The work session number 3 would be dedicated to a discussion between the board members on each of the proposed amendments. As we would have the amendments ahead of time, we could also have the appropriate members of administration there available. So this would primarily be a discussion between the board members, but they would be able to ask questions to people in the administration that work closest with this as the meeting's going on. And ideally, budget session number 3 would end with with decisions from the whole board on whether or not to include each amendment in the final Board of Education requested budget. Phase 3 is similar to the current practice. The OBAFA committee would vote to recommend the CEO's proposed budget as amended by the Board of Education, as amended by those Board of Education amendments. Finally, the Board of Education would vote in late February to pass the Board of Education requested budget and send it to the county. Again, there would be many opportunities for students, families, employees, labor partners, and other community members to voice their opinions on the budget. In some years, the OBAFA committee has released a public survey, so that'd be something for this committee to determine if it was something you wanted to continue in this process. Keeping this short, so we provided a couple of links in this presentation. First, the Gantt chart here is really just the process we went through. It's just a more, an easier way to see it visually. And second, there's links to both of these in the presentation that you could click on. The second is the initial draft of the proposed amendment template. So the sections are pretty detailed right now, and I think this is something that we'll have to workshop and determine if it actually fits what we would need. But it includes amendment background, stakeholder analysis, financial analysis, evaluation of the alternatives, recommendation, administration comments, and an implementation plan, which would be completed by administration if the amendment is actually finally passed. And the cover page here, if you click on it, outlines who's responsible for completing the different sections. So some of this would be completed by board members, by the board member that's actually sponsoring the amendment. And then some of it would be completed by administration in some of the more detailed areas. So this is really trying to get to a place where we have fully developed amendments and we've considered all alternatives, and the board members that will be voting on it are aware of how this affects all the stakeholders and is aware of the administration comments before final votes are taken. With that, I'll return the floor to the committee chair.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Herbstman. Can you go back to slide 8 for me?
Sure.
So this was an important slide to me because it's always important to hear from our community, specifically regarding money and how it's being spent throughout the county. So it's great that you have these listed here. I'll take some time to kind of review how that fits into the overall schedule of things. I know you said the Gantt chart's a better, more detailed, or a more detailed way of kind of seeing the full process as a whole. And then jump forward. Oh, no, you don't need to jump forward. The amendment templates, I'll take some additional time to review that as well. It looks like it's, as opposed to what we have now, more of a collaborative effort where we're kind of passing the document back and forth in terms of here's an idea. Okay, here's the background to it. How does it affect? We have the bandwidth or the knowledge to know how this fits into our overall thing. Administration fills out some stuff, brings it back to a board member. So it kind of seems like it would flow well. I need to take some time and kind of poke at it some more. I see just from small font, I see there's about 7 sections to it, 7 being the implementation plan. But thank you for taking the first crack at this and putting it together. And I'm glad again that the wheels are kind of turning in terms of what this will look like. Any other questions from colleagues? Again, this is just a time for discussion. We won't be taking a vote on it tonight. I want you all to be able to review this a bit before we pass it up to the board for a full review.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to make a comment, if it's okay.
Please.
I like the timelines, and as we experienced this last budget session, amendments being presented at the last minute that needed more vetting and fiscal notes and all of those kinds of things that were missing. Is there any way we can put, well, you've got timelines, and ask and say that after this, a certain date on this chart, we're going to move forward, because if we have an amendment and this starts in October, I just have a concern about adhering to timelines, especially since we have to submit this by March, I think the March 1st, whatever it's due. And so that we can maintain those timelines. If there are any questions, board members should feel free to contact the administration for clarification within a certain timeline. This way we won't get into the board meeting and have amendments brought in that were did not get full, I'll just use the term fully vetted, because some of them were dependent on whether the staff would be able, if the council didn't accept them, they'd send it back and then the staff can work on it. I just think that's moving in a backward mode, whereas if we specifically give timelines for completing this budget process and any amendments as we go along, the OBAFA committee will be reviewing and bringing back to the board information, and board members will have the opportunity, and if they see where there's an amendment needed, to make sure that before it's presented, that it's complete with everything that's needed in that amendment. That's just a comment I wanted to make based on the experience we had this year.
Yeah, Dr. Miller. And I think the really good thing about what Mr. Herbst has put together and what we've proposed in this committee is just that we can rework the process to include these timelines that you're mentioning, to make it as efficient as possible. So, like I said, these are recommendations. I think Mr. Herbstman is open to us coming back and saying, hey, what about this instead of this? So if there are specific timelines you'd like to see, specific deadlines you'd like to see, then I think this is the time to do it. I mean, you can do it if and when it goes up to the full board as well, but I think that's why we're having kind of this collaborative conversation.
Well, that's why I brought that up, because I want to make sure when it comes out of our committee to the board, it's sort of airtight. Mm-hmm. And well, it's airtight. And if there are any changes, we will have worked some time for those changes, those amendments to be vetted by the administration and updated as required or requested by the board.
Right. Anything to add, Mr. Herbstman?
No, just briefly to Dr. Miller's point, I did kind of skip over some of the issues with the current process at the beginning. I would say it goes beyond just this last year. At least the 4 cycles that I've been here for, we have been very inconsistent in how we've done this. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily the fault of any board member or administration member that's trying to do this right, but it's just it's clear that we've had a lack of a process. So we're trying to take this in the complete opposite direction, make it a very formal process to kind of deal with those issues and make sure that that board members, before they're asked to vote, have a very full picture of what is being changed in the amendment and how it impacts what is already in the budget before the amendment goes forward. So that is the goal. And as you said, Mr. Harris, we are very open to changes in this process, knowing that it does take staff significant time to vet. So there are areas where we're going to need certain amount of times to work with, but we look forward to the collaboration with this committee to get this right. And as Dr. Miller said, airtight before it really moves forward.
That was the politically correct response. No blame.
Any other comments from my colleagues? Right.
Well, I'll just say, Chair Harris, thank you for your leadership on this. It's incredibly important. I'll add to Brother Herbstman's point. I've been on the board for 9 years, and it's been consistent for 9 years, not just 4. So I'm glad that we're really, taking the lead on this and setting an example. But I believe all of the members of the board, if given ample time, will be able to have a fair hearing and fair opportunity to present their vision for the school district.
Perfect. Okay, Dr. Fawcett, anything to add to this agenda item? It's not mandatory.
I think we're good. It's pretty much Chief Hersman, said it all. We just want to, make it a better, fair process so that all voices can be heard and everybody has the knowledge needed to make a valid vote.
Okay, sounds good. So that does not conclude 3.4. I actually want to make one additional note that spins well into our next one. I'd like to highlight the OBAFA work plan from last year. So a lot of credit to our committee as well as the former chair, Ms. Queen, for the work that we put into that. We were able to tap both internal and external groups and entities to be able to have these sometimes tough topics around, COVID and human resources and CIP and budget. Money is always a weird thing to talk about, right? So I'm glad we had this work plan together. I'm glad it has functioned well over the course of the past year. And most importantly, I'm glad that we were able to bring our constituents and our community to the table so that their voice could be heard. So I look forward to doing that again next year, which again spins into my next topic of 3.5, which will be our planning for next year. So colleagues, I'd like to turn your attention to the draft 2022-2023 draft OBAFA committee work plan that's been posted to board docs. Again, this plan has been posted. I encourage you to review it. This is not the night that I want to take it to a vote. I'd rather you all go home and be able to digest it a little bit. I think tentatively, and you can just shake your head for me, Aisha, if this is true, our tentative date that we're working forward to get, our tentative date we're working to get this work plan to administration is June 15th, somewhere around that time. June 15th, I'm seeing head nods. Okay, June 15th. So tentatively, colleagues, I'd like you to review the work plan and present any changes you might have to myself and Ms. Berkeley by May 11th. That's 2 weeks. How many weeks is that? That's 2 weeks or so. May 11th. And then on May 18th, we'll actually take the vote on the work plan. Now having it on May 18th allows us to have an additional 4 weeks. Having it on May 18th allows us to give it to administration way before it's due, but still allows us time to make any minor corrections that we might want to in the wake of things. So I encourage you to review it. We'll have 2 weeks, basically 3 weeks before we take it to a vote. And then we'll continue to make those kind of minute changes along the way. But I think we should get it to them a little bit early. I expect nothing but excellence from our committee. So I think any discussion around the work plan, any questions? If folks have already looked at it and have questions, I don't expect you to have already looked at it.
Just want to let you know, Board Member Harris, you have 3 weeks, then 4 weeks, because the 11th would be 3 weeks out. So you got a little more time.
Okay, even better.
Yep.
Even better. Okay, colleagues. Again, any suggestions you have for amendments to the work plan, feel free to send it to myself and Ms. Berkeley. And same thing with amendments to Mr. Herbstman's recommendations. You can just send them to the full committee. I think everyone, it's transparent here. So any other comments on the work plan? I think I'll react to that. So I think we're good to move forward. So section 4, follow-ups and next steps. Section 4.1 is follow-ups. So this will be the follow-up items regarding the second quarter internal audit report from March 16th of the OBAFA committee. All these have been posted to board docs. I see Ms. Winstead's camera is on. I don't know if she has anything to add other than they're on board docs. Just a head nod's fine. Okay.
That's correct.
On board docs. So you're free to review those at your leisure. Any questions from colleagues regarding second quarter internal audit reports? Okay. Lastly, for the good of the order and the next step. So for the good of the order, I am excited that we are allowing our students to have in-person, well, it was in-person last year, but to kind of get back to the normal graduation. I think that's really important for them to experience in their high school career. So thank you to Dr. Fawcett and Dr. Golson and the whole team for everything you've done in that regard, and getting our students back to, I call it a norm of sorts. Does anyone else have anything for the good of the order? I see you, Dr. Miller.
Oh, I just wanted to say it was a very comprehensive presentation, and I look forward to our team, the OBAFA team, pulling together what's needed so that, as you said, Mr. Harris, we can get this done expeditiously.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No problem, thank you. And so next steps, the next OBAFA committee meeting will be May 18th, 2022 at 5 p.m. Please join us if you can. Again, public comment will be open for that meeting as well. And I think that's all we have for you this week. Thank you for joining us. I see Dr. Fawcett looking, see 6:11. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Man, second, sorry. The motion carries. I'm sorry, all in favor. I'm getting hit.
Aye.
All right, the motion
Aye.
carries. We are adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.
Don't leave, Mr. Harris. Stay on after. I just have a question to ask you.
No problem, everyone. Have a good
And
one.
Curtis, you can stay on too. Are we good, Aisha? I still see 7 people.
She might have to stop the recording though.
Stop the recording. Are you sure you want to
I
stop?
just want to know how many of us were on